What's going on, Johnny Nation? Welcome to episode 179 of the Eye on the Storm podcast. My name is David Barrow, and St. John's had another important week on their hands. Following two road wins last week, they came home and dismantled Marquette by 24 points thanks to a big second half inside Madison Square Garden, and then took a three-game winning streak to Pennsylvania to play Villanova. Led by a familiar face, Kevin Willard, the Wildcats have been one of the better teams in the conference, but thanks to the best game of the season by not only Bryce Hopkins, but also Ian Jackson, the Johnnies earned a huge 86-79 win over Villanova. St. John's has seemingly turned the corner, and four wins in a row have this team not only trending in the right direction, but there feels like there's real momentum building as we head into the thick of things in conference play. It was just a 1 point game at halftime, and St. John's would come out of the locker room like a team possessed. They would lead by as much as 17 points thanks to defense and owning the paint. They weren't missing early on, but Villanova would not go away, as you would expect from a Kevin Willard team. Of course, the Johnnies remember him and what his Seton Hall teams looked like, but the Johnnies would, in fact, prevail. They would outlast those six made threes by Villanova in the second half, and the Red Storm would never let Villanova get closer than five. And unlike earlier in the season when St. John's would get punched in the mouth, well, the trend lately has been St. John's punching back and punching back hard. Justin, welcome back. Welcome to what seems to be that new leaf turning over. It's a fourth quad one win of the season for St. John's, and it's actually the first quad 1A win of the season, which, for those that don't know, is a road win over a top 40 net team. Your thoughts on St. John's resiliency? Another road win, their fourth in conference play, and how you're feeling going into Tuesday against Seton Hall at Madison Square Garden.
On the heels of two tremendous road wins, I think that some could have said that the Marquette game was a trap game, that they were going to be looking ahead to Villanova, but they took care of business. And as we talked about last time, this was one of those games that I had circled on the calendar because there's certain games where you just look at the schedule and the way it breaks down, and you say this is one that could be a turning point, or this is one that would really catapult a team. Obviously, I don't have to tell you about UConn looming in early February, but this was the game before that they really kind of had to have if they want to make an argument as to why they should be a top four seed in the NCAA tournament. And they took care of business. And the final score really doesn't reflect what St. John's did in the second half of this game. Again, a 1 point lead at halftime. Villanova was hitting key shots. Some of them were from, I guess the Jersey Turnpike. I couldn't believe some of the shots that went in, especially in the first half. Ironically enough, their shooting percentage was even better in the second half, and Villanova played very well. But the Johnnies, their interior defense, their ability to score inside, and quite frankly, their ability to hit key shots was the spark that propelled them to this huge quad 1A road win. And I'll just say, we're Villanova fans the rest of the way. We want them to win basketball games so that this is one of those games that is a marquee win come resume time.
And listen, that Villanova team is good. I think that getting to see them against St. John's was important. I think that they were one of those teams that had really good success early on, and then you were kind of questioning, like, all right, is this team really in the top half of the conference? There's been a lot of talk of like St. John's, Seton Hall, Villanova, and for a few weeks there was just Seton Hall and Villanova as like the number 2 or 3 team in the conference. That has certainly flipped now that St. John's has rattled off 4 in a row. That's I think the first thing that we have to start with here, because and we've said this now a few times, Justin. I asked you basically the same question after the last 4 wins, because it looks like the team is starting to come together. And again, it's a reminder for a lot of fans about letting the season sort of play out and seeing how Rick Pitino's teams start to gel. We saw it last season. You saw it at the end of Rick Pitino's first year, how much momentum there was for the Johnnies going into the Big East tournament, the way that they took care of their first game and how they gave UConn the business and were the closest team to giving UConn any kind of a struggle the year that they won the championship. And then, of course, last season, where at this point last season, they were 7-1 in conference as well. Clearly, there is more of a structure, I think, that's being established. In the Marquette game, just to touch on that a little bit, because we didn't have an episode, it was a very odd first half. There was a lot of Rick Pitino tinkering with lineups, something that he hasn't done the last few games. Kelvin Odie played. We saw extended minutes for Io. We saw a few more of the guys from the bench that really weren't playing get extended looks. And then in this game, everything kind of went back to what he was doing in those first two wins, where the rotation got shrunk again. And much to our conversation about it about a week ago, it was 8 guys. It was 8 guys getting the bulk of the minutes. Ruben Prey and Lefty played very sparingly, and the rotation was 8 guys. It's clearly the recipe for success. I don't think it's a mistake that you have assigned roles, and even if you're interchanging the pieces a little bit, like Io for Lefty basically in this game, it allows the core nucleus of Ian, Bryce, Zuby, Ozaya, and Dylan, guys that know what's expected of them. They know they're going to get the bulk of the minutes. They don't have to kind of look over their shoulder. And it's clearly been a recipe for success for this 4-game winning streak for St. John's that has everybody basically starting to talk a little bit more about the Johnnies getting back into the national picture.
We've talked about this before, but in order to have success, you don't need to have a 12-man rotation. What you need to have is 8, maybe 9 guys getting the bulk of the minutes in a given game. But what St. John's does is they have a lot of sneaky depth. One day, lefties having 18 points or 17 points on 20 minutes. Other games, Ruben Prey is contributing big minutes in the paint if one of the big 3 are in foul trouble. In this game, it was coming from a blend of guys. Dylan Darling got 10 minutes. Io had a solid 9 minutes. But again, you're getting it from different guys. So they have the ability to throw 12 at you, but they kind of shrink it down based on matchups and other things. And it seems to obviously be working. But to your point, the core of this team is getting the bulk of the minutes. And the core of this team is coming together because there are 2 guys in particular who played their best games of the year last night. And on a night where Ozaya Sellers, who has been kind of carrying this team in many ways the last 2 weeks, he had a quiet night, not an off night, a quiet night. He was in foul trouble. He only played 30 minutes, 4 for 9 from the field, 1 for 4 from 3, a quiet night. But 2 other guys stepped up in his absence and did not allow this team to lose.
Ian Jackson played his best game in a St. John's uniform. He scored 20 points early in the season against Bucknell. That was your first kind of glimpse at how he can be as a scorer. Don't really care about a non-conference performance. On the road, in a hostile environment, even with their Patagonia vests on, all those bananas in the stands, Ian Jackson played the way Ian Jackson should be playing on this St. John's roster. What you saw on Saturday night at the Xfinity Center from Ian Jackson is why everybody thought this St. John's Portal Hall would be so dangerous. Because when he's doing what he was doing and attacking the way that he is, clearly showing that he is one of the best, if not the best, guards in the conference off the dribble and getting to the rim, it allows your offense to completely open up. Because what happened yesterday St. John's dominated in the paint because Ian was able to get into the paint, and it's not just reliant on your bigs. Ian was able to keep them off balance. Nobody could stay in front of him. And you saw a real weapon in Ian Jackson. He changes everything when he plays like that. Who's getting to the rim at will. He started the game with 7 of St. John's first 11 points. Then he gets into some foul trouble, and you throw your hands up and you're like, damn it, Ian, you got to stay on the court. It's been his biggest bugaboo all season. Forget the turnovers. It's not even the turnovers anymore. It's been foul trouble. And he comes back at the start of the second half, immediately gets right to the rim again. And then Justin, he hit that step back three that looked like James Harden, that looked like Steph Curry. And holy cow, what a moment. That was a monster three. I think it was so important for Ian because I think he's been playing so much better of late. Rick Pitino has obviously been praising him a lot of late, but I think he needed a scoring night like that so that he realizes that that's how he's got to play the whole entire game. 18 points, 2 assists, 2 steals. He did have 3 turnovers in 23 minutes, but most of his damage did come in that second half. He was so instrumental. I thought him and Bryce Hopkins played really well off of each other, especially in that second half. That Ian Jackson is the Ian Jackson that St. John's fans thought they were getting. That's the Ian Jackson that St. John's fans were so excited about coming from North Carolina. That is the Ian Jackson that's Cardinal Hayes superstar, 5-star McDonald's All-American. That's the Ian Jackson. If he stays for the rest of this season, if that's the play that you see the rest of the season, this St. John's team goes to another level.
You're absolutely right. And this was perhaps his breakout game. He's had some ups and downs. We know we've talked about that. We've killed him for some of his play, but this is what we were looking for from Ian Jackson. And he didn't even play a perfect game. He was only 1 for 4 from 3, but the one he hit was a dagger. And Villanova was throwing punches at that point. St. John's was kind of backing up and was on the defense until all of a sudden he comes back and hits that 3 and almost quelled the run. Now, obviously, Villanova would make a little bit of a noise later, but the game was out of hand at that point, and it was really kind of a non-factor. But 18 points in 23 minutes on 7 of 12 shooting, I mean, this was the performance. And I think that what I appreciated more than anything was that he was getting around Villanova's guards. He was getting to the basket at will. And let's be honest, there's very few bigs that can stop Ian Jackson when he's going downhill, going to the basket, because he's got such touch and such finesse. And he's so crafty that it's not the kind of thing where you can just stand in front of him, because he can go around you, he can go over you, he can go underneath you. He's got a lot of tools in his arsenal. And credit to Villanova. They played a very good game. Those bigs can rebound the basketball, but they had no answer for Ian Jackson when he got past the guards.
Ian mentioned in the postgame that Villanova's drop coverage allowed him to just have the space he needed to go downhill. And when you're going to be playing like that, and they, Villanova really had Duke Brennan, and he had 9 points, 9 rebounds, and he was, he's somebody that's been playing well this season, but he was no match for St. John's interior. And that starts with Bryce Hopkins. I thought Bryce Hopkins had his best game in a Johnny's uniform. The best thing that I can say is that we've said that a few times now about Bryce Hopkins. That's the third 20-point performance from Bryce Hopkins. Forget about the points. I don't care about the actual points. I care that Bryce Hopkins did what, Justin? Tell me what I'm so excited about with Bryce Hopkins.
Everything else. And I know what you're getting at, but hear me out for a second. 3 offensive rebounds, 3 defensive rebounds, so 6 boards, 2 assists, a block, a steal, and aggression on offense. He was taking over the game. And so I know what you're getting at, but the reality is he did everything. This was the performance that you got from Bryce Hopkins that you were expecting. The McDonald's All-American, the 5-star recruit to Kentucky. I mean, this is what you were. So you got it from 2 guys yesterday, but his not only willingness, but that desire to take over the basketball game offensively led him to, I think, what was probably his best defensive performance. And Patino talked about that in the post game, how offense leads to defense. You saw it on full display with Bryce yesterday.
Bryce Hopkins' aggression is the other key to this offense. You've heard us say that many times. Anybody that's been watching St. John's this year has seen that when Bryce Hopkins goes, when he stops being hesitant, when he doesn't pump fake that three and lets it fly, when he doesn't just pump fake twice underneath the hoop looking for a foul, when he doesn't wait for contact, that's the difference. 20.6 rebounds, and he got to the line 10 times. That part, getting to the line 10 times, because his aggression got Nova in foul trouble and changed everything for St. John's. So, yeah, he missed some shots, but the way that he imposed his will and his aggression was huge in this game. And that's like, start pairing what we're talking about together. When Bryce Hopkins plays like that, when Ian Jackson plays the way that he did on the road, not against the cupcake opponent. And we're not talking about Marquette anymore. I can't believe I'm saying Marquette and cupcake in the same sentence. That's what changes the projection and the outlook of this damn team. And that's what makes you so excited now. On January 18th, you wake up, the coffee's tasting a lot better this morning, 4 games in a row. Everybody's feeling themselves. Me and Justin got the black on again. We're not taking it off. We're not washing these sweaters. That's it. We're letting it fly. Bryce Hopkins played, as Justin just said, like the Bryce Hopkins that you wanted to see from the transfer portal that you remember from Providence. That's what you needed. When these two guys, Ian and Hopkins, two of your most high-profile guys in the transfer portal in the entire sport, let alone for St. John's, guys who have taken a lot of punches and a lot of arrows and a lot of criticism from us, from you, from everybody, answered in a huge way in a road win that is going to now push, I think, St. John's the rest of the way.
This might be the game that we look back to and say, that's when these two guys figured it out. Now, it's too early to tell. There's a lot of basketball left, but this might be the game. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, is part of the reason for their success, the success of Dillon Mitchell. Dillon Mitchell has opened up the floor for this entire squad because his size and his athleticism and the things that he can do with the basketball that nobody else on this roster can do are nothing short of amazing. And he's gotten a lot of minutes as of late, 35 yesterday. But I thought Dillon Mitchell also had one of his best performances. And I wonder if by him playing some of his best ball, it's allowing Ian and Bryce to have that freedom to be that aggressive, to go to the basket, to draw fouls. Your thoughts on Dillon Mitchell's performance?
Unquestionably, yes. Rick Pitino throwing Dillon Mitchell into the starting lineup has ignited the Red Storm. Just, I want to take you back to, let's say, September, when you and I first started talking about this, when we had our first few episodes. There was a conversations early in the preseason. Is St. John's going to go with 3 bigs? And I know I was like, I don't think so, because I was a little bit worried about the interior depth overall, and that if they got into foul trouble, that it would just be Dillon and Ruben that could come off of the bench. And so I thought that's probably not going to happen. And we didn't really see it much, especially the beginning part of the season. And you had Dillon kind of coming off the bench, Rick Pitino saying he's going to be the best 6 man in the country. And now Dillon gets thrown into the starting lineup, changes everything. Point forward, he's so athletically gifted, obviously, but he does, by proxy, what Ian Jackson and Bryce Hopkins did yesterday for the rest of the lineup. He allows everybody else to go. And he might not be able to score 20 points in a game, but he's such a dynamic basketball player that you can't relax around him. And he's bringing the ball up and he's throwing assists. He's going to get into the paint and get rebounds. Justin, in the first half, he had a layup that he bobbled and like flew in the rim, still caught it and it went in. And I was like, holy cow! Like he's insane. We've said it all season from the dunks to the way that he moves on the court. But I couldn't agree with you more. He's changed the outlook of this starting five on the court. He's changed and allowed guys to play within themselves more. He has opened things up for Zuby Ejiofor, for Bryce Hopkins, and obviously the guards around too. He has unlocked everything in this starting five or any kind of five when he's on the court.
And I'm not sure you can go. And listen, I mean, like you can go back to a 3 guard lineup if you're in foul trouble. You can obviously go to Prey, but if you're in real trouble, you can go back to the 3 guard lineup. But I don't see any reason why you would.
No.
At this point, because you've seen the success. And I think that when you've got guys like Hopkins and Mitchell, yeah, they're bigs, but they do things that guards do. And that's why they're so dynamic. And this is something we haven't talked about much, but I think it's also an incredible point. Villanova is a very good basketball team. Villanova has always been smart, heady. They don't turn the ball over generally, etc. That goes back to the Jay Wright days. But what St. John's was able to do yesterday, their switches on defense was something that was textbook. And it was what we saw last year when they were really locked and loaded in February. But you're starting to see it now where they're driving the other team further and further away from the basket because they can't handle the switches. Now, we knew Zuby did it last year, but this year, Mitchell can do it. Prey has done it in spurts in his limited minutes.
Yeah, he's shown he can do it.
And so the ability to think you're going to get penetration, and then all of a sudden another 6'8" guy is standing in front of you just changes the dynamic of your offense. Now, to Villanova's credit, they scored at a high clip in the second half, but they didn't get a ton of shots up because of the St. John's ability to switch on defense.
The bomb threes that Devin Askew hit, that Tyler Perkins hit in the game were essentially because of that. I mean, Johnnies were switching, they're pushing Villanova out. And listen, credit to those two guys. First of all, Devin Askew should be collecting Social Security. He's 97 years old. Why are you still in college? Go get a job. But he hit some insane shots. Tyler Perkins, who hit the game winner last year against St. John's, was again really huge in this game. Those two combined for 44 points against St. John's last night. But the switching is obviously something that St. John's has, I think, started to get. And I think that when you look at St. John's teams getting it under Rick Pitino, he's talked about the defense obviously taking a lot of time, guys understanding their roles. And again, in this NIL era where players are coming in and out, that's such a important teaching moment, and you're just kind of waiting for it to click. And it seems like it's clicking because these last 4 games, we've talked about how good St. John's has been on switching. So I think your point is a really important there as well. I want to play Rick Pitino's comment here after the post game, in which he talked about Bryce Hopkins, the change in Bryce Hopkins's personality on the court, as we've heard him ask Bryce multiple times publicly for that alpha dog mentality. He's got to allow the other parts of basketball to lead to the offense. And then he actually also brings up Joe Sanon, who we're going to discuss as well. Here's Rick.
I think he's developing a much better personality. And what I mean by that is he's really getting into the team and the emotion of the team. We're a very emotional team. We leave the locker room very emotional. And he's getting into it. He went after some rebounds tonight that were pure toughness. He didn't deny about 3 times in the press, and I got on him. He said, "That's my bad. It won't happen again." So he's really coming out of his shell. I think it just takes a little time getting to know each other, but he's improving Ian's improving. I never worried about Josan for one bit. He's had 2 great practices. I know he can score. He played good defense tonight. Josan, I don't even concern about. He's a great basketball player. Hasn't shown it yet, but he will.
Justin, I think that we've made our points on Hopkins, but Josan Sanon did not have a great game. Josan Sanon, I can argue, made the 2 biggest shots in the entire game and is the reason why St. John's didn't crumble in this game. And so credit to him for that, because there's a lot going on with Josan Sanon right now, and it's not really good as far as basketball goes. Yesterday, after Tyler Perkins made a 3 to cut the lead to 66-59, Josan Sanon hits his first 3. You got the crowd back into it. St. John's had a 17-point lead in the second half. It's starting to whittle away, and you push the lead back up to 10 points. Psychologically, and you've heard me mention, I'm writing down these moments that I'm hoping to kind of, they sort of, I know where it's going to be important, and they happen to be. And you've heard me talk about it the last few games. 66-59, he hits a 3, push it back up to 10. That's huge, okay? Then his second big 3 was to give St. John's an 11-point lead, 77-66 with 3:45 to play. Again, it gives you that 11-point cushion with the games kind of whittling down. It was huge moments, crowds getting back into it. Major credit to Josan Sanon. Look, he's 8 for 33 in his last 5 games. He's scored 25 points in 5 games. His minutes have decreased. He played 36 minutes and only scored 3 points in that loss against Providence. Everybody is ready to write him off. And he's gone to the bench. Played only 60 minutes in the last 4 games. 8 points against Marquette. Started to, feel himself a little bit. Got some decent mid-range shots. But those 6 points against Villanova in limited minutes, I think he only played like 17 minutes, I think were really important. And we know he's not shy about letting that thing fly. When you're struggling, when the team is clearly playing better with you on the bench, that kind of stuff can get in your head. And credit to Josan, because I really do think those 2 threes last night were monstrous in Johnny's coming out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania with a win.
Going to steal a page from the Bill Raftery playbook and just say onions. His willingness to take those 2 shots down the stretch on a game where he was coming off the bench, like you said, an off shooting night, otherwise onions. And credit to Rick Pitino for allowing him the flexibility and giving him the confidence that I want you to keep shooting, because those shots were monumental in not blowing this lead. Because listen, the reality is this: as I watched the second half, I've been beaten down in the past. The doubt started to seep in when Nova was making the run. I said to myself, is this going to be another game where they blew a second half lead? And the answer was ultimately no, in large part because Sanon hit those 2 tremendous threes and jabbed right back when Villanova had thrown their best punch.
That's kind of where I was going in the open, where, that's the change that we've seen in St. John's lately, is that, Marquette, the second half, they pulled away and beat the living crap out of them, but that's the worst team in the conference this season. You saw an amazing second half against Butler, in the first half against Creighton. This team is starting to really punch back and buy into themselves. And for somebody like Josan, he has not played well. And the team has played better with Josan not on the court. That's the numbers say that, all of it. And, after the Marquette game, Rick Pitino said, I think if you're talking about physical talent, Josan Sanon's the most talented guy on the roster. If you're talking about understanding how to play, he's not. Does he want to learn the things that he doesn't do well? That's what is going to come down to whether or not he reaches greatness. That's harsh words and big words from Rick Pitino. You've mentioned it many times, Justin, that, Rick's trying to motivate, obviously. So he, as you heard in that clip, said that he's never been worried about Josan, but he's clearly trying to push the buttons to try to get more out of Josan. Josan is a dynamic guard. You've heard us say it at the start of this season. I thought Josan could lead this team in scoring, honestly, the way that he can be a weapon, but he's not been playing great. I just think he deserves a lot of credit for those two big shots because they were really, really important.
And you've not heard the last from him. There will be a game, maybe multiple games as we get deeper and deeper into the Big East, where he, whether starting or coming off the bench, puts up 15 points and single-handedly takes the team in a game where maybe they have an off night where he is the man. You can't write the kid off. You're just looking for a little more consistency, but you're seeing it from Jackson. You're seeing it from Hopkins. Wouldn't surprise me at all if Sanon starts playing better basketball as we get into January.
Just let's talk about halftime. 36-35, punch, counter punch in the first half. And you look at the numbers, you look at everything, and you're like, okay. And I tweeted at halftime, this feels like it's going to be a quote-unquote last season type of a game. And if the Johnnies are going to want to win, they're going to have to grind this one out on the road. The 3-game winning streak have been by a ton of points. Now let's see what this team is made of and if they can muck it up in a win. Here's Rick Pitino on the emotional halftime message and why he yelled at Zuby at halftime.
Well, our halftime was very emotional. I don't ever get on Zuby, and I got on Zuby very hard for backing up. And I told him, I said, listen, man, you're not perfect. Although you've been perfect in my eyes, you're not perfect. I make mistakes, you make mistakes. Stop backing up. And the rest of you guys, stop backing up. Take away the 3. Stop doing it. And I knew he'd come out and play well. It's only 2 times in my life where I've really gotten on 2 players and I felt bad about it. One was Billy Donovan in the Alabama-Birmingham game, and Zuby tonight. I felt bad about it. But feeling bad only lasted about 5 seconds with me.
Justin, I don't know what you were doing in 1986, but Providence played UAB in the first round of the NCAA tournament. In that game, a young Billy Donovan, who Rick Pitino always waxes poetically about, went 12 of 17 from the floor, 6 of 9 from 3, had 35 points, 12 assists, 4 rebounds, 3 steals, and 6 turnovers in a game that Providence won 90-68. Rick Pitino just said that he's only ever yelled at one other player and felt bad about it for 5 seconds, that he yelled at the way that he did yelling at Zuby at halftime yesterday. And that was Billy Donovan. And you're going to probably get an article from Kevin Connolly, friend of the show, I believe on Monday, about this. And he's the one that pointed this out to me. And what the hell are you yelling at Billy Donovan for, scoring 35 points in a game that Providence won 90-68 in the first half? But again, it kind of goes back to Rick being Rick. Yelling at Zuby at halftime was about the defense. Obviously not what Zuby was doing offensively, but it was about the defense and how they were backing up off of their players. It's something that we've heard a lot about. Just really interesting stuff because, again, at halftime, everything flips. Everything changes. St. John's comes out, hair on fire, 20-4, right out of the locker room. They get the lead by 17, 56-39. And it all happened in less than 6 minutes. Sellers had 4 points. Jackson had 9. Hopkins had 2. And they turned Villanova over 4 times. We've said it many, many times. That was Bryce. That was Ian. That was Sellers getting his mid-range after going, Sellers in the first half did nothing in 15 minutes. And it's like, oh man, everybody around Sellers was doing something and Sellers was just out there and he wasn't contributing much. And then he comes out in the second half. He really wakes up, has 9 points in the second half. It was huge. The Johnnies scored on 12 of their first 13 possessions, Justin. That was huge. Flips the game on the road, gives you the momentum. But this isn't a Kyle Neptune team anymore at Villanova. This is Kevin Willard team. And you remember how big of a pain it was playing Seton Hall and Kevin Willard. Villanova punched back. But the Johnnies, the story was that halftime, the change, and how much that defense really, really kicked in to start those 6 minutes of the second half.
There are certain things that are kryptonite to Rick Pitino. 6 turnovers is kryptonite to Rick Pitino. He doesn't care if Billy Donovan would have scored 50 in that game. He was going to chew him out. But other than turnovers, it's defense and rebounding the basketball. And so if Rick Pitino was not happy with the defense in the first half, he was going to let you know about it. And obviously the Rick being upset was very short-lived. He joked about it being all of 5 seconds, but the message was received because they locked in the second half. And even Kevin Willard in his post-game comments talked a little bit about how St. John's came out of the half and really just, kind of put their foot down. But that stretch of 12 of 13 makes, those are the types of runs that really good teams have, and they never give the game back. And that was what was so promising to me. A lot of college basketball games, even when you have a lopsided matchup, start out somewhat neck and neck, and then the good team makes the run. The good team says they clamp down, they lock in defensively, they start hitting shots, and the next thing you know, the ball game is over. That's what very good teams do. And it's what St. John's really wasn't able to do earlier this season. But you're starting to see them have those runs. And I wonder if that is the kind of thing that separates them from the pack down the stretch. Credit to these guys for responding. And listen, we talk a little, we always have great things to say about Zuby. He had another efficient game from the field, 7 of 12 from the field. Missed a ton of free throws, but I'm going to give him a pass because he's been so good all year, but it wasn't Zuby's best game. But in the second half, he was able to do whatever he wanted inside, and that was the difference.
You know who's not giving Zuby Ejiofor a pass? Zuby. Because as soon as he got on the post game with the TV crew, he's staring at the stat sheet and he's like, I know I missed a bunch of free throws. And I turned to my wife as soon as I saw Zuby looking at the stat sheet. I'm like, he's going to absolutely kill himself for those free throws. I know it. And he absolutely did. 17 points, 7 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 block, played 37 minutes. Please appreciate what you're seeing, St. John's fans. I know that you do. Please appreciate number 24 in the red and white. The chances of you seeing another player like this in this current era for this long in a red and white uniform is rare. Please appreciate what you're seeing. The heart, the hustle, the give a you-know-what meter will never be higher with any player you will ever see in a St. John's uniform. He is the heart and soul of this team. He is the heart and soul of this program. And he is the absolute best person that you can have represent your basketball program. Appreciate what you're watching, Johnny fans. There will not be another Zuby Ejiofor. They will have a whale of a time replacing number 24 next year. So appreciate what you're going to be seeing for the rest of the season. Because again, you're watching an all-time great Johnny right now. And he's having a monster season. And there's a lot of pressure on this kid. Preseason Big East Player of the Year. Talks about being an All-American. There's NBA talk. And he is putting on a season where there's been a lot of adversity on St. John's. And he has answered in spades. What he did yesterday, nothing short of great. And yeah, he's going to be the first one that takes himself to task for going 2 of 7 at the line. And the Johnnies missed a lot of free throws yesterday. They missed 10 free throws. I guarantee you Zuby Ejiofor is in the gym today shooting free throws.
Zuby Ejiofor is going to have a monster game on Tuesday night against Seton Hall. I'm telling you right now, win or lose, and I do think that St. John's wins this game handily, but Zuby Ejiofor is going to have a night on Tuesday. If you think that he is going to take a step back because he missed a couple of free throws, you've got another thing coming. He's going to come out there. You're going to see it on display. And the stat sheet, he's going to fill it up across the board on Tuesday, and it's going to lead them to another win. But again, the fact that he's the heart and soul of this team, I cannot put into words how beautiful it is to see him going from a sophomore, kind of getting his bearings, to what you see now as a senior leading this team. I've never seen anything like it, and you might not see anything like it again, given the construct of modern college basketball.
Justin, behind me in my office where I record, there's two jerseys that are hanging. One is D'Angelo Harrison. The other is Zuby Ejiofor. You want to talk about the heart of a program, the toughness of a program, the most perfect players to represent culture of a basketball team. Good luck finding two better. I can't overemphasize enough what Zuby Ejiofor means to this basketball program. And when there's so many stumbles along the way of a season, you need consistent voices. You need performances that back up words. And when you hear things like, we're not going to give up, we have to look in the mirror, when you have your captain vocally, publicly tell everybody, you guys better get your stuff together and look in the mirror, or this season is going downhill. You guys all need to step up. That's what Zuby has done last year, this year. Phenomenal. And again, I want to point now to after the Creighton win, Lefteris Leotopoulos' big game. He said that the team met after the Providence loss and said, we're not losing again. Bryce Hopkins said the loss to Providence left a bad taste in their mouths. 4 wins in a row since that meeting. I guarantee you, Zuby Ejiofor was a big voice in that meeting. So I keep asking you, Justin, was that Providence loss the kick in the ass that changed everything for this St. John's season? Was that meeting where they said, we're not losing again, the turning point? I sure hope they keep winning, because that's a hell of a cute story the rest of the way.
You know, we didn't talk after the Marquette game, but there was a pass that, and I forget who it was at Marquette, that threw the ball into the backcourt. And Zuby Ejiofor, out of nowhere, comes flying down the court. A lot of miles on those legs. He's played a lot of minutes the last 2 years, but he comes flying down the court, picks up the basketball, and stuffs it. Now, it would have been very easy for Marquette to just take the backcourt, give St. John's the out, and let St. John's run their offense. But Zuby Ejiofor single-handedly willed himself to that basket. How do you not play hard when your All-American big is flying down the court, diving after loose balls, stuffing it in the backcourt? Is there a better role model in college basketball?
Justin, do you know what the score of the game was when he did that?
I know that St. John's had a lead.
St. John's was up by 20 points.
Yeah. I mean,
20 points in the second half, and your 6'9" center is sprinting down the court, looking like Rashid Shaheed yesterday for the Seattle Seahawks, taking the opening kickoff all the way, and diving on the court, getting some court burn in a 20-point win. I turned to everybody who I was sitting next to at that moment, and I was like, they're up by 20 effing points, and look what he's effing doing. He is the most perfect example of what a captain resembles for a basketball team.
And that is why I will give him a pass for missing 5 free throws in a row yesterday because at the end of the day, he is emblematic of what my team. If I could have 5 Zuby Ejiofor's every year, you'd never hear a complaint out of me ever again. But truly, a special moment, a
No point
special
guard
player.
complaints.
I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. Give me 5 Zubies and I'll figure it out. But kidding aside, he has been so special, and enjoy it because his run is coming to an end. He's got another 2.5 months left. Just sit back and enjoy the ride.
Hopefully longer than that. You're cutting off April and doing that.
We'll let's hope it's 3 months and a plane ticket to Indy, but we'll get to that as we get closer.
All right, a few more important things to note from this game. Sadiq Ibine Ayo, I thought, hit two really key mid-range jumpers in his 8 minutes. He's somebody that obviously hasn't played much this year, but Rick's been using him for spurts. I thought he made really two important jumpers there. Again, I go back to Prey and Lefty playing 4 minutes total, and again, the rotation being 8 guys. I can't stress enough how important that seems to be for this 4-game winning streak, for things kind of coming into focus for Rick Pitino. I think St. John's deserves a lot of credit for withstanding the ridiculous shot making by Tyler Perkins and Devin Askew, who helped Villanova come back from a 17-point lead. I think St. John's deserves a lot of credit on the road, not wavering in a situation like that where Villanova made 11 threes. St. John's only made 5. That was a big key in this game. And, Tyler Perkins, Devin Askew, they made some ridiculous shots, man. And it says a lot about this team turning the proverbial corner that we keep saying. When on the road, you don't falter like that. We saw the Providence loss. You saw the Kentucky loss. You saw the Auburn loss. The way that they lost those games were just not being able to counter when you need it. And they helped. It's just they deserve a lot of credit right now. I think you're hearing a lot of people, swipe their Metro card, get their tickets, start coming back onto that bandwagon for St. John's. You're going to see the national media start talking about St. John's this week. I guarantee it. Now, on Monday, the AP poll comes out. I don't think St. John's is going to be ranked again, but I think there is an outside chance of it. Why? It's a very, very, very big week for St. John's around their ecosystem because Kentucky got 2 road wins. That LSU win at the buzzer was shades of Christian Laettner. If you still haven't seen that play, please go look at that. And then Kentucky beat number 24 Tennessee over the weekend. Ole Miss got 2 huge wins. They beat number 21 Georgia earlier in the week on a buzzer beater themselves, about 20 minutes after Kentucky's buzzer beater. And then they beat Mississippi State at home on the road on Saturday. That was huge. Butler beat Seton Hall yesterday. Providence and DePaul picked up important wins. And there was a lot of teams in the AP top 25 in general, especially towards the bottom, that did lose as well. So St. John's is going to probably be in that top 30 or so. I wouldn't be surprised if they sneak back into the top 25. I don't think so. But just a lot of movement has been happening, and St. John's has taken care of business and looked really good doing so over the last 2 weeks, but especially this week.
They're certainly passing the eye test now. I don't know. I don't think they're going to be ranked this week, but I think they will be ranked very soon. I think that they're going to take care of business, and I think that you will see a number next to their game certainly before we play UConn on February 6th. And so again, not to look too far ahead, they've got to take care of business between now and then. But what you're starting to see is the possibility of 2 top 25 teams playing each other for Big East bragging rights, because the winner of that game will be sitting atop the conference.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're certainly starting to see a clear line of demarcation within the conference again. I think it's UConn at the top. I think St. John's is clearly the second team. And then I really think it's Villanova at number three. I think they're an impressive team. I think they're going to struggle with anybody that has a serious interior game, but nobody's got a better interior game than St. John's. So let's see how that kind of plays out the rest of the season for them. St. John's has now won each of their first four games to start the season in Big East play for the first time since 1982. Huge. You now set up a really important game on Tuesday night. Justin, we talked about the last 2 weeks as being these really important barometers for how St. John's has looked, and they've passed everything that you've wanted from them. You didn't fall into the trap game with Marquette. You didn't allow the road to deter you. And now you come home. And now you should have 19,000 inside Madison Square Garden on a Tuesday night. You're going to have some Seton Hall fans come over the bridge. And Seton Hall coming off a 2-loss week. Man, they almost got UConn. They almost got UConn. UConn looked like they were going to win that game by 15 points. Seton Hall storms back, almost picks them off. They don't, but almost. And then you think, all right, they're going to go play Butler, and they should beat Butler. And then Seton Hall loses to Butler. Uh-oh. That was unexpected. You're talking about Seton Hall as being like the top team, one of the top teams in the conference, and you lose to Butler.
You never heard those words come out of my mouth because I thought this was smoke and mirrors from day one. I still don't believe this team is as good as their record would indicate. But had they knocked off UConn or beaten Butler, I would be a little bit more weary about this game on Tuesday night. I just don't see where or how this Seton Hall team can compete with top teams around the country. I just don't see it.
Momentum. It's all with St. John's. There is not a team that is surging right now more than St. John's. Quad 1A win on the road against Villanova, and now you set up against the Seton Hall team. They will drop out of the top 25 on Monday, I'm sure of that. But they're going to come and play tough, and they're a really good defensive team. And so now the question is, how does St. John's handle Seton Hall's defense? How does St. John's handle their press? How does St. John's handle their physicality? I think St. John's could probably, if they run and if they're able to run, they could really outscore them to the point where Seton Hall is not able to keep up. That being said, Coach Pitino certainly does not think they're going to be scoring a ton of points in this one. They don't think they're going to be scoring high 80s and 90s in this one. So that's going to be the difference here. Let's see how St. John's is able to answer the defense. Can Ian Jackson continue playing aggressively the way that he has? Can the turnovers be kept to a minimum? St. John's was under 10 turnovers again in this game against Villanova. So these are all the things that are leading you to be more confident in a St. John's team. I think it's going to say a lot for St. John's to play a different style of game. When they played against Ole Miss and they squeaked it out at the Garden in a low-scoring game, I thought that was important. Obviously, it wasn't ideal, but it showed that St. John's didn't need to score 90 points to win. I think you're going to need more than 59 points in this one, or 63 points, whatever they scored against Ole Miss. I believe it was 63. But it's going to be a interesting test because it's going to change the style of how you have had to play the entire season, really, up until Tuesday.
Seton Hall has the uncanny ability to just muck things up and make the game ugly and dirty. And they don't win with a lot of finesse. They win with grit and determination and defense. And credit to them because they've had a much better season than I predicted at the outset of the season. I thought they were going to finish last in the conference. Okay. I did not think this team was going to win more than maybe 2 or 3 Big East games. And what you're seeing is a phenomenal job up and down the roster, the coaching, getting every ounce out of your players, and credit to Seton Hall for that. However, St. John's has shown the ability to win in multiple ways. They've shown the ability to win on the road. And now you come home in front of what I anticipate being a next to, if not a full sellout crowd on Tuesday night. Momentum has swung in the other direction. Seton Hall reeling after those 2 losses. This is going to be an ugly game, but St. John's will come out on top and punch Seton Hall in the mouth and keep the streak alive.
Let's put a bow on this with Rick Pitino kind of encapsulating what's changed for St. John's. We talked about the missed free throws. Dylan Mitchell, who has clearly struggled from the line this season, went 6 of 7 from the line, but Zuby Ejiofor goes 2 of 7. Rick Pitino said that part of the conversation towards the end of the game, while Villanova was going on their run, was about learning from past mistakes and playing not to lose. I think that's often coach speak, but in this sense, he wanted the mentality of the guys to not get down about missed shots and make sure that they stayed aggressive. Here's Rick.
Yeah, I think anytime you score, you play better defense. And what I kept telling them on missed free throws, I said, look, we've been here before, and we've lost the lead because you get down about a missed free throw. So let's learn from that. Let's get our stops. And I kept telling them, don't play not to lose. Play to win. Keep attacking. Don't play not to lose. When you're on the road, if you have a fear of them coming back, they get their run and they win the game.
Justin, that change in mindset, that ability that St. John's is able to counterpunch that I keep bringing up is the difference and is why going into Seton Hall, there is such momentum because they are playing more as a unit. They are playing with a different kind of style. They are playing with a different kind of aggression. And road wins are premium in this sport, but doing it the way that they have done it so far, I think sets you up for even in a game where you're going to have to change the way that you have to play, you know you can do it because the mentality for this team and the play style is completely different. Momentum, total play, total buy-in. January 18th, this team has completely changed, I think, their identity, something that we have asked for. I think that I said that this team was soft about a month ago. This team has answered the bell, has answered the call. And like I said earlier, Rick Pitino teams that start to get it around this time, another notch in that column of proving that there is merit behind said sentence.
I believe it was the great Herma Edwards that said you play to win the game. And that's what this team is now doing. And that's why they're 4-0 in true road games this year. When Seton Hall comes into the Garden, I expect it to be loud. I expect it to be raucous. And I expect 2 players to step up to win in this game. Dylan Mitchell and Dylan Darling. Take it to the bank.
Whoa, Dylan Darling. I wasn't expecting that one. The 2 Dylans get it done for Justin against Seton Hall coming up on Tuesday. Johnnies get an 86-79 win over Villanova on the road. They are 6-1 to start conference play. They are the number 2 team in the conference on the standings, and the Johnnies are surging. I hope to see you on Tuesday night at Madison Square Garden. We will be there, and we'll be ready for an absolutely fun game. The Red Storm have got it clicking, and you can't ask for anything else. He's Justin Kramer. Thank you so much for listening. Johnny Nation, we will catch you next time.